Hello everyone, my name is Walter Briggs. I'm 72 years old now. These days, my hands shake when I hold a coffee mug, and my knees complain when the weather changes. But there was a time when my hands were steady enough to carry a child out of hell, and my heart was strong enough to survive what came after. I'm telling you this now because some stories don't age quietly. They stay loud, they stay heavy. And this one, it still wakes me up some nights. Before I go on, I'll say this. If stories about family, betrayal, and children being hurt hit close to home, take a breath. And if you believe people should be held accountable no matter how powerful they are, you'll understand why I'm telling this. If you're listening, stay with me. Also hit the subscribe button. It started on a cold night in the mountains of Virginia, years ago now, with a man named Daniel Hart. Daniel was a soldier, not the loud kind. The quiet, disciplined kind who learned to survive by paying attention to what didn't feel right. He had just come back early from overseas, deployment cut short, orders changed without warning. After nearly 16 hours in the air, another long stretch of processing, and a brutal overnight drive through winding mountain roads, all he wanted was to see his little girl's face. Her name was Lily. She was 7, missing 2 teeth, loved pancakes too much, and still slept with a worn-out stuffed rabbit she refused to give up. Daniel had missed her birthday by 2 weeks. That guilt had followed him through every patrol, every mission. This time was supposed to be different. This was his last tour. Retirement papers were already filed. He was coming home for good. He pulled into the driveway around 3 in the morning. The house was dark, too dark, no porch light, no lamp left on, just silence and the sound of wind moving through the trees. The front door was unlocked. That was the first thing that set his nerves on edge. Daniel moved through the house the way the army had trained him to, slow, quiet, alert. The kitchen was a mess, dishes stacked, mail scattered. His wife's purse left out like someone had rushed off and forgotten it. Upstairs, his wife Karen was asleep in their bed, still dressed, an empty wine bottle on the nightstand, but Lily's room was empty. Her bed was made, her shoes were gone. The stuffed rabbit was missing. When Daniel woke Karen and asked where their daughter was, she mumbled something about her mother watching Lily for a few days, said she'd sent an email, said it was work stuff, she wouldn't look him in the eye. Every instinct Daniel had honed over 12 years of combat screamed that something was wrong. Without another word, he grabbed his keys and drove deeper into the mountains, toward a property owned by Karen's mother, Margaret Crow. A woman Daniel never trusted, a woman who ran what she called a discipline retreat for troubled children. Spiritual guidance, she said, character building. Daniel called it a scam. The gravel road leading to the property was lit up like daytime when he arrived. Lights on at that hour meant only one thing: someone didn't want darkness hiding what they were doing. Margaret was waiting at the door when he arrived, thin and stiff, eyes sharp, voice calm in a way that felt rehearsed. She told him Lily was outside, reflecting, said the cold was part of the lesson. Daniel ran before she finished speaking. Behind the house, near the tree line, he found a hole in the ground, and inside that hole was his daughter, shaking, soaked, barely able to speak. When he pulled Lily out and wrapped her against his chest, she whispered something that would split his life in two. "Daddy, don't look in the other hole." That was the moment this stopped being about bad judgment or strict parenting. That was the moment Daniel realized he had stumbled into something far darker, something that had been happening long before his daughter ever set foot on that property. And if you're listening right now, this is where I ask you to stay with me. Because what came next exposed not just one monster, but a system that protected her. If you want to hear how deep it really went, you know what to do. By the time the sun came up, nothing felt real anymore. I remember Daniel sitting in his truck with Lily wrapped in his jacket, the heater blasting so hard the windows fogged over. She wouldn't let go of him, not even to wipe her tears. Her little hands were locked into the back of his coat like if she loosened her grip, the ground might open up again and swallow her whole. Daniel didn't go home that morning. He drove to a small motel just off the highway. One of those places with flickering neon signs and coffee that tasted like burnt metal. It was the only place open. He carried Lily inside like she weighed nothing, laid her on the bed, and sat on the floor beside her until she finally fell asleep from pure exhaustion. That's when his soldier's brain took over. Fear had its place, but focus kept people alive. While Lily slept, Daniel opened his laptop. He typed one name into the search bar, Margaret Crow. What came up at first looked clean. Too clean, a polished website, smiling kids, Bible verses about obedience and correction, testimonials from parents thanking her for saving their children, 3-month programs, cash payments only, $50,000 per child. 50,000. Daniel leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. You don't charge that kind of money for discipline. You charge that kind of money for silence. He dug deeper. Forums, archived posts. Half-deleted comments from parents who sounded confused, angry, ashamed. One mother wrote that her son came back thinner, quieter, terrified of basements. Another said her daughter wouldn't sleep unless the lights were on and dirt was nowhere near her bed. One post stopped Daniel cold. We sent our girl there last year. She never came home. Margaret said she ran away. Police told us there was nothing they could do. Daniel copied the name mentioned in the comments, then another, then another. Missing children. This wasn't one bad night. This wasn't one cruel woman who went too far. This was a machine. The money trail led through shell companies with names like Faith Renewal Services and Crow Family Outreach. Same address. Different paperwork, and every time a complaint showed up in public records, it vanished a few weeks later, dismissed, closed, unfounded. Daniel felt that familiar pressure behind his eyes. The same feeling he'd had overseas when things didn't add up and someone was lying. Only this time the battlefield was home. His phone buzzed, a message from Karen. "Where are you?" Police came to the house asking questions about my mother. "What's going on?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he called the one man he trusted without question, a former partner from his service days, a man who knew how to dig quietly and disappear when needed. "Something's wrong," Daniel said when the line connected. "I think powerful people are protecting a child abuse operation." There was a pause, then his friend said, "Send me everything." Daniel closed the laptop and looked over at Lily. She stirred in her sleep, murmuring something he couldn't make out. He moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed, making sure she was still breathing steady. That was when he understood the real danger. Margaret hadn't been afraid when he took Lily. She'd been angry. Angry people who think they're untouchable don't stop. They strike back. And if you've ever wondered how evil survives for so long without anyone stopping it, this is how. Money, paperwork, and people in places you're taught to trust. If this story is pulling you in, stay close. What Daniel uncovered next proved just how deep the rot went, and who was standing in front of it like a shield. By the third day, Daniel stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that hole in the ground, not just Lily's, but the other one, the one she begged him not to look into. The weight of that knowledge sat on his chest like a brick. And then the truth came closer than he ever expected. It didn't come from the police. It didn't come from the internet. It came from his own kitchen. Daniel went back to the house late that afternoon. Not because he wanted to, but because there were questions that couldn't be answered over a phone call. Karen's car was in the driveway. She'd been waiting. She looked wrecked, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. Hands shaking as she wrapped them around a mug she wasn't drinking from. "You scared me," she said when she saw him. "The police won't tell me anything. They took my mom. They're saying insane things." Daniel didn't sit down. "Where were you Tuesday morning?" he asked. Karen blinked. "What?" "Day before work, before Lily disappeared from our house." She hesitated just long enough. "I took her to my mom's place," she said. "I already told you that." "Why Tuesday?" Daniel pressed. Karen's jaw tightened. "Because I was exhausted." She wouldn't listen. She talked back. She refused to eat. "I needed help." "Help?" Daniel felt something crack behind his ribs. "You didn't send her there for help," he said quietly. "You sent her there to be broken." Karen stood up. "That's not fair. My mom is strict, not cruel. She believes in discipline." Daniel pulled out his phone. He didn't show her the whole. He didn't show her the photos of the property. He showed her one picture, a name etched into metal, a child's name. Karen stared at the screen, her face draining of color. She stumbled back against the counter and retched into the sink. "That's not real," she whispered. "That has to be fake." Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and deadly calm. "Our daughter was standing in freezing mud at 2 in the morning. She told me bad girls sleep in graves. She begged me not to look in the other hole." Karen slid to the floor. "I didn't know," she cried. "I swear I didn't know they were killing kids." Daniel didn't raise his voice. "You knew she hurt them." Silence. "You knew your mother scared children into obedience. You knew Melody cut her off years ago. You knew something was wrong and you sent Lily anyway." Karen sobbed harder. "I thought I could control it. I told her to just scare her a little." Daniel straightened. You don't scare a child with a grave, he said, and you don't gamble with your own daughter's life. That was the moment the marriage ended, not with yelling, not with threats. With the clear understanding that the person he trusted most had opened the door and pushed their child inside. Pack your things, Daniel said. You're leaving. You can't. This is my house too. Our daughter has nightmares, he replied. You don't get to share space with that. Karen tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to cling to the word mother like it erased everything else. Daniel didn't budge. You're going to cooperate with the investigation, he said. You're going to give me full custody, and you're going to stay away from Lily unless she asks for you. If you don't, everyone will know exactly what you did. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. One more thing, he said. If you ever tell yourself this wasn't your fault, remember this. Evil didn't sneak into our family. You carried our daughter straight to it. Outside, Daniel sat in his truck for a long time before starting the engine. This wasn't just about stopping Margaret anymore. This was about tearing down everyone who made it possible. And if you're still listening right now, understand this. Sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from monsters hiding in the dark. It comes from the people who swear they love you and still choose convenience over your child's safety. If that truth hits hard, stay with me. What Daniel did next crossed a line, and once he crossed it, there was no going back, yes, I'm sure. By the fourth day, Daniel stopped believing the system would save anyone. The police were polite, careful, slow, too slow. They talked about procedures, warrants, jurisdiction. They said things like ongoing investigation and due process. Daniel had heard those words before overseas, when help was promised but never came. Meanwhile, Lily flinched every time someone knocked on the motel door. That night she woke screaming, clawing at his shirt, crying that the ground was closing in again. Daniel held her until sunrise, whispering promises he didn't know how to keep yet. That morning his phone buzzed, a message from the friend he'd called days earlier. I found something. And you're not going to like it. They met in a diner on the edge of town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who didn't ask questions. Daniel slid into the seat across from him, eyes tired, jaw set. There were complaints, his friend said, opening a laptop. Lots of them, parents, neighbors, even a former employee. Every single one died in family court. Daniel leaned in. Same judge, the man continued. Same name every time. The name hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. Margaret's brother, a county judge. The man responsible for deciding whether abuse claims were valid had been dismissing every single case tied to his sister. Daniel exhaled slowly. So the law was never blind, he said. It was looking the other way. There's more, his friend added. Money didn't just sit with her, it moved. Offshore accounts, cash handoffs, shell charities. Someone helped her clean it. Daniel stared at the screen, rage settling into something colder. This doesn't end with her arrest, he said. They'll bury it, they'll call her a lone monster and move on. And you? The man asked. Daniel thought of Lily's small hands gripping his coat, thought of the children whose names would never make the news. I'm not done, he said. That afternoon, Daniel crossed a line he never thought he would. He started collecting evidence on his own, not hacking, not stealing, just listening, watching, asking questions that didn't sound like questions. A retired social worker mentioned pressure from above. A former contractor admitted he'd been paid extra to build structures and told not to ask why. A neighbor remembered hearing children crying at night and being warned to mind their business. Every piece alone meant nothing. Together they formed a map, and at the center of it wasn't just Margaret, it was protection. Daniel realized something terrifying then. If he stopped now, if he trusted the process, this would happen again, to another child, another family, another hole in the ground. That night, Daniel made a decision. He wasn't going to be reckless. He wasn't going to be violent, but he was going to make it impossible for them to hide. And once you decide that, once you choose exposure over safety, you become a target. If you're still with me, remember this moment. Because this is where the story shifts. This is where a grieving father becomes something far more dangerous to powerful people, a man who refuses to look away. By the time the fifth day arrived, Daniel understood one brutal truth. The people involved weren't scared of prison. They were scared of exposure. That's what made them dangerous. That evening, while Lily was in therapy, Daniel met the same friend again, this time not in public. A quiet garage behind an auto shop, oil-stained concrete, no cameras. I dug deeper, the friend said. Followed the money like you asked. Daniel didn't interrupt. There's a company. On paper, it's a consulting firm that helps families place troubled kids into special programs. In reality, it doesn't exist. No office, no staff, just accounts. Daniel's jaw tightened. And the money, parents paid that company. That company paid Margaret, then the rest was split between her brother, a social services supervisor, and a sheriff's deputy. Daniel closed his eyes for a second. So every door that should have stopped this was locked from the inside, his friend finished. That night Daniel received a call he never expected. Margaret wanted to talk. She didn't sound confident anymore. No arrogance, no control. She sounded desperate. "I didn't mean for things to go that far," she said over the phone. "You have to understand I was pressured, people above me." Daniel cut her off. "Children died." Silence. Then she whispered, "If I talk, I won't survive prison." Daniel laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it was revealing. "You survived while kids didn't," he said. "That's not my problem." She tried another angle. "Your wife knew," Margaret said softly. "She sent families to me. She was paid." The words landed like a gunshot. Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. "What did you say?" "She helped recruit. She believed in the program. She got 5,000 per child." The call ended. Daniel sat there in the dark long after the phone went silent. His wife hadn't just trusted Margaret, she'd profited. The next morning Daniel confronted her. She didn't deny it. She cried. She begged. She said she thought it was discipline, not torture. She said she needed the money. She said everyone was doing it. Daniel didn't raise his voice. That scared her more than yelling ever could. "You sent our daughter there," he said calmly. "You sent other people's children too, for money." She tried to touch him. He stepped back. "You don't get to be near her anymore." That afternoon, the FBI called. They wanted statements, documents, cooperation. Daniel gave them everything he had, but he also understood something terrifying. Even now, even with all this, some of them would walk free. Deals would be made, charges reduced, names buried, and the worst ones, the ones with power, would survive. That night, Daniel packed a bag, not to run, to prepare. Because when the truth threatens powerful people, they don't fight fair. And Daniel knew the next move wouldn't come from the courts. It would come in silence, in shadows, in retaliation. If you're still listening, stay with me. Because what happens next is where everything nearly falls apart, and where a father risks losing everything to make sure the truth survives. By the time the arrests began, Daniel knew it wasn't over. It never is. 2 names were missing from the list: Margaret's brother and the sheriff's deputy who signed off on everything. Both vanished within 12 hours. No phones, no credit cards, no homes. People like that don't run without help. The FBI called it flight risk mitigation failure. Daniel called it what it really was: protection. That night his friend came back, face pale, voice low. "They didn't go south," he said. "They went quiet, deep rural. Cash-only places. Someone tipped them off before the warrants were signed." Daniel didn't ask who. He already knew. The system had sprung a leak, again. Lily was sleeping when Daniel sat at the edge of her bed, watching her breathe. The bruises were gone now, but the flinches weren't. She still jumped at footsteps, still checked doors twice. He brushed her hair back gently. "I won't let them disappear," he whispered. "I promise." The next morning Daniel made a decision he never thought he'd make. He stepped outside the rules, not violently, not recklessly, but deliberately. Through old favors and older debts, he found someone who knew how people vanish and how they resurface when pressure is applied in the right places. 3 days later they found them, not hiding in some luxury bunker, but rotting in a decaying hunting lodge miles from anywhere. No electricity, no signal, no protection, just fear. Daniel didn't bring a weapon. He didn't need one. When Margaret's brother opened the door and saw him, his face drained of color. "You shouldn't be here," the man said. Daniel smiled. "You shouldn't have touched children." The deputy tried to bargain promises, names, deals. Daniel listened. Then he leaned in close. "The world already knows enough," he said quietly. "But if you don't walk back into custody by sunrise, I make sure it learns everything. Every name, every payment, every child." They surrendered the next morning. No heroics, no chase, just 2 broken men walking into the light they thought they could escape. When Daniel got the call confirming it, he didn't celebrate. He sat down, because the weight finally hit him. Justice had moved. But it had taken pieces of him with it. That night, Lily hugged him for the first time since everything began, not tightly, but willingly. And that's when Daniel realized something. He hadn't just been fighting criminals. He'd been fighting a system that counted on exhaustion, on silence, on parents giving up. The trial dates came like storm clouds over the town. Daniel sat in the gallery with Lily at his side. She was smaller than he remembered, cautious but alive. She clung to his hand, squeezing it as though it were a lifeline because it was. Odor Avail went first. The evidence was brutal. Grave locations, physical proof, financial trails, testimony from the surviving children. The courtroom felt too small for the magnitude of her crimes. Her defense tried to frame her as a misguided savior, helping troubled kids and pressured by her brother, Gregory Vale. The jury didn't buy it, guilty on all counts. Life without parole. Next was Gregory. His suave, measured demeanor crumbled under the weight of his emails, financial spreadsheets, and his own confession. Guilty, life sentence. The rest followed. Deputy Carlos, complicit in filing false reports, 15 years. Christina Vance, state investigator who squashed complaints, 10. Phyllis Marlowe, the social worker who accepted kickbacks, 20. Parents who knowingly sent their children, including Margaret's estranged family and others, faced years behind bars, restitution, and public scorn. Sasha, Daniel's ex-wife, was perhaps the hardest to witness. She looked broken, small, and pitiful on the stand as prosecutors laid out her direct role in recruiting children. The jury had no sympathy. 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. Through it all, Daniel never took his eyes off Lily. She didn't attend the trial, too young, but they played video testimony from her. Even in fragments, her voice shook as she described being trapped, fearful, and powerless. Daniel felt both pride and pain. She survived. Months later, Daniel walked into family court for the final custody hearing. The judge, having reviewed all documentation, declarations, and evidence, looked at him and Lily. "Mr. Vance," she said, "you have done an extraordinary job raising your daughter under unimaginable circumstances. Full custody is granted. Parental rights of Sasha Vance are permanently terminated." Lily's hand squeezed his, eyes wide. "Does this mean Mommy can't take me back ever?" Daniel hugged her. "You're mine forever. No one can ever take that from you." At home that night, they celebrated quietly, pizza, ice cream, a movie. Just the two of them together, finally free of immediate threat. Yet Daniel knew something. The fight didn't end with prison sentences or court orders. Shadows of those crimes lingered, scars that wouldn't fully fade. But for now, the danger had passed, and for Lily, that was enough. Justice had been served, healing had begun, and Daniel finally allowed himself to hope.